In this video, we are looking at example number 2 in lesson 6.4, solving systems of equations using substitution in the real world. Okay, this was the first example that we did right here. Okay, so we're doing example number 2 now. Together, teammates Pedro and Ricky got 2,671 base hits last season. Pedro had 281 more hits than Ricky. How many hits did each player have? Okay, we're going to solve a system. We're going to write and solve a system of equations to help us figure out how many hits each player had. All right, remember, you always want to read the last sentence to figure out, well, what am I looking for here? What are my variables going to be? And we're talking about the number of hits each player had, and there's two different people. There's Pedro and there's Ricky that both had hits. All right, so let's say that P stands for the number of hits Pedro had. That's one of our unknowns. And then R, we could say, stands for the number of hits Ricky had. Okay, those are our two variables because it's asking how many hits did each player have. We don't know, so they're variables. We have to solve for them. Okay, now we have to use what we know from the situation to help us with our systems of equations. All right, so it says together. The word together means to add, right? So together, teammates Pedro and Ricky got 2,671 base hits last season. And like I said, the word together means to add. So what we could say is the number of hits Pedro had, so P, plus the number of hits Ricky had, which is R, equals, well, they told us together they got 2,671. There's our first equation. Okay, and then it says Pedro had 281 more hits than Ricky. So Pedro, P, equals, he had as many as Ricky plus 281 more, right? Because he had 281 more hits than Ricky. So however many Ricky got, R, we have to add on 281 more. All right, we just set up our system of equations. We wrote one for this real world situation. And now what we're going to do is we are going to solve. And we would use substitution because here's an isolated variable right here, P. Okay, we'll take our first equation, P plus R equals 2,671. All right, and then we're going to substitute. Wherever we see a P, we're going to put in R plus 281. All right, but because what we want to do is we want to get it down to one equation with one variable that we're solving for right now. We can't just solve this with not knowing two variables. So let's substitute in P, which we know is R plus 281, plus R equals 2,671. All right, so we just used substitution. Wherever we saw the P right here, we plugged in R plus 281. That's what this is right here. Now we have one equation that we're solving for and one variable at a time. We're only solving for R now. That's what we want to do. All right, we have an R, and we're adding another R. So let's combine those, and we have 2R plus 281 equals 2,671. All right, now, sorry. Think about what we have to do next to solve for R. All right, Well, if you're thinking that what we need to do is we need to subtract 281 from both sides, then you are correct. All right, so let's do that because we have to get r by itself. So let's subtract 281 from both sides. Cancel out over here. And we're left with 2r equals, when you subtract these two, it's 2,390. Turn on the light. Now the light's back on. All right, now we are going to divide by 2 on both sides to get r by itself. And we have that r equals 1,195. So we just found out that Ricky, r represents the number of hits Ricky had. Ricky had 1,195 hits. All right, but we still need to figure out P, the number of hits Pedro had. Well, how do we do that? Well, let's go back up. We'll recopy this equation because P equals R plus 281. Remember, Pedro had 281 more than Ricky. So if Ricky had 1,195, and the number of hits Pedro had is, let's plug in R, 1,195 hits, plus 281. All right, so then what we need to do is we're going to add them. And we have that Pedro, the number of hits Pedro had was 1,476. All right, so let's write that. Pedro had 1,476 hits, and Ricky had 1,195 hits. All right, we want to make sure we write it in a sentence at the end because we're talking about the real world application. All right, now you want to try the got it number 2, and then watch the video for that.